Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Guest List podcast. I'm your host, Steve Guest. This podcast was born out of my first book, Top Biller, The Life of a Recruiter, and I was getting inundated with questions, scenarios, requests for help, and I couldn't answer all of them. And I thought, what better way to provide more value and content than to create a podcast, get some hugely invaluable guests onto the show that can share their stories and their content, their value that will hopefully help a lot more listeners in a huge and bigger, more influential way. So today's guest I've known for a number of years. We've met before and we've done some collaboration, which I'll share in a bit. I'm not going to hang about. I'm going to go straight into today's guest's bio. Today's guest's passion is to help companies, sales teams, and sales leaders sell more with LinkedIn. More leads, more pipeline, more revenue, more customers, and more business. No fluff, no guessing, no theory. Just pure tried, tested, and proven systems, techniques, and strategies to turn LinkedIn into a lead generating and sales machine. Today's guests, what have they achieved? Millions of pounds in revenue closed and won directly from LinkedIn generated leads. Over 800,000 plus LinkedIn followers, growing by 10,000 every single month. LinkedIn content has been viewed by 10 million plus people every single month. Trained over 2,500 salespeople globally to sell successfully on LinkedIn. Best-selling author of The Ultimate LinkedIn Sales Guide. Best-selling author of The £1 Million LinkedIn Message. #1 most influential sales expert on LinkedIn 2019, 2020 and 2021. Daniel Disney, I think that's probably a good moment for you to enter the podcast. Welcome along.
Thank you, Steve. Lovely introduction, and it's quite a lot of stuff I've been able to do over the last few years. I think if I was to sort of wrap that into one sort of sentence, I love LinkedIn and I love helping people get more from LinkedIn. And I think that's essentially where our relationship was forged. You know, you've done amazing things on LinkedIn and built an amazing personal brand. And I think we share quite a lot of things in common in trying to help people get more from it. So I'm excited to chat with you today, sir.
Good stuff. Thank you. And I was trying to think back before we kind of came on air about where our, I suppose, relationship and connection started. And I think I'd been following you for a while, and I seem to remember dropping you a message saying, I've seen this post you put out. Love the way it's written. Are you okay if I kind of use that post, put my own wording there, not actually kind of copy or plagiarize your content, but start to understand perhaps what you were doing in terms of posts, because that's really important, isn't it? Looking at what works and making it your own.
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn is full of great content that you can see by the engagement, how well it's doing. And you're right, don't just copy it and plagiarize it. Not a good strategy, but talk to the people, the creators, the authors of these posts. And there is a lot you can learn just by reading, just by going through your feed on a regular basis and seeing what people are doing. And I mean, we can kind of dig into it a little bit deeper in the episode, but a lot of people are fascinated by the algorithm. And one of the easiest ways to understand what LinkedIn is pushing is just to look at what is doing really well on the feed as you scroll through. What is getting the higher engagement? What can you see that connects it to other posts that are doing well? But I think what you did was great, and I've done it plenty of times. I see people that are doing well and I reach out to them. Yeah. It's a great post, you know, can I reference it? Can we do something? You know, and LinkedIn is great for that next level networking. It's kind of like going in this virtual room with all these people in your industry and all around the world, and you can talk to them and build relationships, and who knows where those relationships lead. I mean, think about that, Steve. That first message you sent me,
exactly that.
Here we are several years later, and all the great stuff we've been able to do together, and still everything that could happen in the years to come.
Well, that's it. I mean, you touched on it there, that initial kind of first contact, and you wrote the foreword to my new book, A Personal Brand Story, because of the combination of sharing, keeping that content, actually reaching out and asking for help or asking for some advice, or the ability to kind of use each other's post types or setup. Okay, so talk to me about where it came from. You've been practicing this avidly for the last 5 years or so. Where did the idea come from? What was the thought process?
So my background sales, from first sort of job out of college through to leaving the corporate space. And about 7 or 8 years ago, LinkedIn really started to grow here in the UK, and it got onto my radar. I think I had an email from LinkedIn. A customer of mine sent me a connection request. Now, if you aren't registered on LinkedIn, you get an email from them, and then it prompts you to set up an account to accept it. And sort of, I soon realized that my customers were on it, then my prospects were on it. There was content. It was this amazing professional social network. And for me, it sort of connected so many dots. I was a very driven salesperson, and it was all there. I'd be attending physical face-to-face networking events several times each week to get business. And suddenly I could be sat at my laptop with a coffee and be able to network with people and message them. And the more I used it, the more I realized there were other things you could do, like sharing content.
Yeah.
And suddenly my prospects were getting value from that content and messaging me, telling me they enjoyed it, and conversations were starting. And it just made me realize how powerful a platform it was back then. And obviously year on year, it's just grown and grown and grown. More features, more opportunities. And I think I was lucky in the timing that I got onto it. But even now, I see people coming onto LinkedIn in 2022 and doing the right things and being able to, sort of catapult the attention they get. But that was my starting point, coming onto LinkedIn 7-8 years ago, seeing my customers were using it and spotting opportunities.
Similar story to you, to be honest. I remember going on a client meeting. So I joined LinkedIn 2008, I reckon. Good while ago. And it was probably relatively in its infancy then, I would think. And I was sat in a client meeting with a business development manager who said, you really should be on LinkedIn doing what you do, being a recruiter. Why aren't you on it in the first place? And you should really get on it. And if I'm honest, thinking back to then, I probably used it more as a database more than a social media platform. And it was very much on a Friday night, I'd get my glass of wine and my beer, I'd get my takeaway, sit in front of a good film, draw up a list of contacts or potential clients and contacts, and just connect. I remember getting kicked off the platform several times because
same.
yeah, because people would say they didn't know me, and sometimes it'd be people that I'd placed. Being the recruiter, you're not always the one people want to necessarily associate with. But as I say, I used it very much. It was a numbers game. It was just trying to connect. And then I think over time, I've learned about personal branding. I've learned about the ability to put outward marketing posts out that then help develop the network better than just connecting with random people on a Friday night. Talk to me about social selling. So your LinkedIn people, if they're connected with you or they come and find you, it says the king of social selling. Talk to me about what is social selling?
So social selling was a term I came across in the early sort of days of using it, and it's become quite a big part of sales. So if we take cold calling, which is the traditional method of picking up the phone and phoning someone who doesn't know who you are, and you create a sales opportunity. Most of my sales career has been cold calling. So I'd have databases of numbers, and it'd be phone call after phone call, and uncomfortable conversation after uncomfortable conversation. Now, when LinkedIn came in, my mindset went straight to, I can use this to sell. And what I realized was obviously people around the world were doing the same thing. And so the phrase got coined, social selling, which was essentially using social media to sell. And in the business to business world, LinkedIn is the place where most of that happens. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, those are B2C, business to consumer, whereas LinkedIn definitely dominates the B2B space. So social selling essentially very heavily sits in the LinkedIn sphere, and it's how you leverage LinkedIn to sell. And what was interesting that you were just talking about, Steve, was your experience as a recruiter and building lists and connecting. And there is a lot of negative association to selling on LinkedIn, whether you're a recruiter, salesperson. But it works. And it's the same thing you get with cold calling. A lot of hesitations. Oh, it's, you know, interruptive. It doesn't work. It does work. It does still work. And I think as long as you do it the right way, as long as you are trying to help people, you're trying to find the right people and, you know, help them, then sending messages, picking up the phone, all these things, they do work. But unfortunately, like with every form of communication, companies turn it into a spam engine. And, you know, you have companies making spam cold calls to random people that would have no benefit to their product. You get spam emails, LinkedIn messages, emails, and there's always going to be that negative side. But for me, social selling is using LinkedIn as a sales tool, as a professional seller. So using it to find and identify people that will benefit from your product, your perfect target customers. Connect with them, build strong relationships, give lots of value, have conversations with them that, if all the boxes are ticked, lead to a business transaction where it is equally beneficial. You're going to help them, you get their business, and it's the start of a very long relationship that turns into repeat business and referrals. For me, that's what social selling is. That's how I've always done it. And I see, you know, great salespeople doing the same. So yeah, it's using social to sell, but sell in the right way.
Yeah, and I picked up on a few things there, and we have the same belief and thoughts in terms of social media marketing. I think it's quite often missed by a lot of people, certainly the things that I see out there and the messages I receive. You mentioned what values the person you're trying to attract, or what it is, or the content that you're putting out adds value to the audience. It's not about pitching, selling. It's about forcing someone into a corner to say, this is what I've got, this is what you need. Talk to me about that a little bit in terms of thinking of the audience in hand when you're putting things out, posts out.
It's an interesting thing. So I call it autopilot. I think people go into autopilot when they're selling, and even marketing people and recruiters do the same thing when it comes to LinkedIn. It's like, okay, I need to sell something. I need to generate some business. So I'm just going to promote and advertise my roles, my product, my service. I'm going to pitch. It's just this autopilot. I'm just going to spam out as much and then, you know, wait for stuff to come back. And I think if you switch that off and think, okay, how can I engage my target customers in conversation? It's a very different thought process, and it allows you to then start to become creative and look at value at the core of it. And it's the same principle. If you go to a face-to-face networking event, you're in this room and all your target customers are there, hopefully you don't walk up to everyone and just start pitching your product. You talk to them. How are you? Where do you work? What do you do? How long have you been there? Do you enjoy it? You know, you have a conversation. They ask you questions, and that's how, you know, relationships and business are born. So if we look at that from a social media perspective, it changes the way we message people. But if we think about content is almost like your opportunity to get on stage. And if you're going to get on stage, again, you shouldn't be pitching your product. You don't just get up on stage. Hi, I'm Dan. This is where I work. This is what we do. If you're interested, come and talk to me. It doesn't work like that. You're better off getting on stage. Here are some tips about this particular industry or this particular role. Give them advice. By the way, this is what I do. If you're interested, I'm always available to talk. And content is that platform. When you look at it like that, your content becomes a bit less about you and a lot more about them. And that's where the value comes out. Instead of, you know, I sell marketing solutions. Here are 10 tips for marketing executives right now, blah, blah, blah. On my profile, here is, you know, information about what I do. So value sells, give to get, but it does go against the grain. Autopilot for a lot of companies and everyone using LinkedIn, autopilot is right. Sell, you know, sell. And we switch that off and start to give. We sell more anyway.
It's so true, isn't it? And I think a lot of the time, so I do a lot of recruitment mentoring and training, and we've got a whole subject on building a personal brand, the ability to showcase how you work, what you do, what makes you a good recruitment consultant, what sort of processes do you go through to find the best candidates, what do you do to retain the best clients, how do you beat the competition to find that best person. And quite often the feedback I get or the comments I get back are, well, I don't know what to post. what would you post? I can't think of anything to create or content to consistently put out there. And that seems to be the biggest hurdle a lot of people face. Alongside, I'm frightened of somebody commenting or saying something derogatory or bad. I mean, what would you say to people? You must get that all the time.
I think what helps is that I understand it so well. So I remember being in that place. Like similar to you, Steve, neither of us come from a necessarily creative background. It's not like we've studied marketing for years and, we know how to use all these tools. We're both, whether it's recruitment, sales, we come from a frontline type of position. So when I started using LinkedIn, first thing I did was consume content. I was reading, engaging, and then, commenting and liking and things like that. And then I remember the tipping point where I thought, oh, some good content here. Maybe I want to try and put some content out. And so I just tested things, and most of it was rubbish, Steve. I looked back at my first LinkedIn article a few months ago, which would have been probably 6-7 years ago. And it literally was everything I teach people not to do in an article. It was terrible, but it was the start. And we're lucky now that there are lots of people who teach LinkedIn, people like both of us, obviously, and others. So there is a lot of support out there. And I think for anyone who's struggling with that transition from, not creating to creating, just consume, listen to podcasts, watch, videos, interviews, read, consume. And then probably the best advice I can give is just brainstorm ideas, just get a piece of paper, brainstorm, okay, what different posts could I do? And then just start doing it. Don't overthink it. Do not worry about what happens. Don't worry about how many likes you get or how many comments you get, or if there's going to be negative comments. Don't worry. The thing that should be at your center is, I'm going to put something out that's going to be aimed to help my audience, to help my target customers. As long as that's at your core, you're probably going to be okay. If you go out trying to sell something, then okay, you might get some stick for it. But if you genuinely want to help people, it's hard to steer wrong when you've got that at your heart. So just try and put some content out to help. Here are some tips. Put a poll out. Ask a question that is going to be insightful for your target customers. Share a photo. Let people get to know you. Is so many different things you can do, but just have sounds very cheesy, but a good heart about it. Just genuinely go out there to give. It just eliminates the reason for most people to probably criticize you. But take it slow. Take each day as it comes. Don't overwhelm yourself. Don't stand there looking at this big mountain thinking that you have to start posting every day and you need this many likes and comments. Just take each day. Each day you post is progress. And one final reassurance when it comes to early posting and engagement. You might not get lots of likes and comments when you start posting on LinkedIn. It does not mean you're not impacting people. There will be so many people that will see, consume, and enjoy your content. They'll never click like or write a comment, not because they don't like it, but because that's not the type of person they are. There are more people on LinkedIn are just consumers than actually engagers. So you will still be impacting people. Even if you get 1 like, 2 likes, even if you get no likes, people will still have seen it. You would have impacted someone. And the more you do that, the more people will build a relationship with you online, and it will have a positive impact. So just strip away any expectations, any fears, just go start doing it, and just go out with that solid focus of, I just want to try and help the people in my network and the people that I work with.
Such good advice. And I think sometimes we get consumed with the fact of the kind of vanity metrics, and we think we need to create the next viral post. I often say to recruiters that some of the best posts I've done are actually from a value and content specific, don't add too much. It can be the craziest post. It might be something simple like, LinkedIn isn't working today. Is anyone else having this problem? And you get a flood of messages. And then you added something that you spent a good, 15, 20 minutes writing the day before that got no interest at all, but actually the content and value was better. And I try and get it across that I feel, and I might be wrong in this, but as recruiters, we're almost on a bit of a hide into nothing, because candidates that may be looking aren't likely to comment because they don't necessarily want to show that they're connected with recruiters, and the same with clients. because we're often seen as the dark art of almost that kind of, I've tried everything else, I'm going to go and use a recruitment consultant. Obviously, that's not always the case. This is my 17th year of being a recruitment consultant, so something works. But I think sometimes our direct network don't necessarily want to be seen to be commenting on a recruiter's post. So we almost face the prospect that we're not going to get as many likes as if we work perhaps in another field or somewhere else. Okay, so in terms of personal branding and perhaps the rise of personal branding, I am definitely an advocate of that. You know that already. Talk to me about the power of having a strong personal brand. What can that do for you?
Personal branding is a really fascinating subject, and I think we're still in quite early stages of personal branding being a corporate, platform in essence. The opportunity is huge, Steve. I cannot stress, and I'm so passionate and excited about it. The opportunity of a personal brand is incredible. Like the power that people as individuals have on LinkedIn is phenomenal and dwarfs probably what most marketing departments could ever dream of achieving. And so it's a very exciting time. I think it gives a lot of potential to companies, to sales teams, to individual people within the company. And it's still such an early thing. And I think over the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see a big transition of personal branding becoming a core part of every single corporate training schedule for every company around the world. Like, it is going to be crucial. Marketing departments are going to have to start letting go some of their control and power to start working with the entire company, from CEO to whichever entry level jobs exist, to help as many people as possible start to build their personal brands. It all focuses around a few key things. Number one, people buy from people. We build these better relationships with individuals compared to, unless you're obviously an Apple or a Tesla. Most companies will never be able to achieve that, but your people can start to build those digital relationships. And it's the way we use social media. We tend to follow more people than we do companies. We follow creators that put out good content, and then we build digital relationships with them where they influence what we do. Sometimes we don't even realize it, but we're doing things that they've recommended. And that's the huge power. And it's really impacting B2B. Obviously, B2C, it's been around a bit longer, but now we're seeing it on B2B. And there are influencers now on LinkedIn that are influencing companies and individuals. And so if you're a business and you can create, people in your own team to become influential, and, influential comes in so many layers. It doesn't have to be, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of followers. It can, there are early stages of being influential, but to be able to have your team do that is huge. But we are still, it doesn't feel like, it feels like it's been around for ages, and it has been around a long time, but LinkedIn is kind of just waking up to it. And I think LinkedIn has proven this in the fact that only last year, so 2021, midpoint last year, they just started building a creator team in the business. So LinkedIn has only just started supporting creators on the platform. So LinkedIn is only just waking up to the whole power of a personal brand, which shows why it is still in its infancy. But over the next 3 to 5 years, I think we're going to see a huge boom in personal branding as a subject, which will be great because hopefully we'll see lots of people build their personal brands. We'll see great, much better content on the platform, and the opportunities will flow.
It's exciting, isn't it? And I think there's definitely a hurdle for businesses and companies, because obviously they give away, as you say, an element of control. And I think there has to be some form of training or strategic element behind how a personal brand is allowed to grow, certainly within big corporate companies, because potential brand damage could be huge given the wrong post or the wrong type of content. But I mean, I see it all the time where you've got people, certainly in recruitment, they're there where they have the ability to grow a personal brand and perhaps talk people or take people through their journey. But all they do is share company posts, company updates. Everything's done through the company page, and they might comment and share that, but it goes nowhere. The company updates go nowhere. And the problem with that is there's zero engagement because nobody's following the company pages. Unless they're tagged in it, they don't see it and don't know it. Where do you think the kind of education comes? Do you think that would just come from the growth of personal branding and companies will start to see that this isn't the way forward?
I think there's two areas it's going to impact most. First of all, will be business owners, leaders, your CEOs, your directors, etc. A lot of them are starting to wake up to it. So they're starting to see the potential and see where it is around personal branding and social media. The other thing we're starting to see, and I'm laughing, I had a conversation last night with my PT doing a wonderful exercise session, and he was talking about his sort of other job. He works in sales manager, and he wants to transition into marketing. So he went to his company and said, oh, quite like to, transition into marketing. And they said, oh, you haven't got enough marketing qualifications, would recommend you go and get some marketing qualifications. Now, when he told me that, I sort of laughed and said, most marketing qualifications are so out of date that, so many people, and no disrespect to marketing people, there are amazing marketers out there, but certainly from my experience, a fair few of them, got marketing qualifications 5-10 years ago, and social media just wasn't a part of it. And if it was, it would have been Facebook. LinkedIn, B2B social media is a whole different ball game. And I think what we'll also start to see is marketing professionals, leaders start to understand that more, and maybe more qualifications around it, education. But those are the two components that will always lead to sort of personal brand revolution within a business. So either one of them or both of them will start to wake up to it. And then it's just a case of educating your team. It's funny, you mentioned what holds a lot of companies back, which is that fear. And there's a few fears. One is, what if they post something that's damaging to the brand? Justifiable fear, 100%. Another common fear is, well, what if they start posting and then they attract recruiters and recruiters start to poach them, which is another less rational fear, but I can understand where it comes from. And so I think, the fear of recruiters poaching your staff is definitely a very irrational one, in the sense that you can't control them and hold them in this bubble. Recruiters will always get to them. LinkedIn isn't like the only route to get to them. So stopping them from using it or restricting the way they use it isn't going to keep them with you. You should just treat them better, and then they'll stay with you. So it doesn't matter if a recruiter comes to them, they'll want to stay. But the other thing is education. And I always use the bowling analogy. So if you go bowling, you take your kid bowling, for example, and you let them throw the ball down and the ball goes in the gutter. And that's the fear. They're going to use LinkedIn, they're going to send a bad message, or they're going to put a bad post out. And so you put the barriers up. And in the world of personal branding, that is, teach them how to use it, support them, coach them, support them in the first 3 to 6 months, maybe check their posts for the first couple of weeks before they do it. Provide them the support they need to build their confidence and ability. Because once they know how to do it, like riding a bike, let them off and away they go. But like with anything, give them that support up front and then you're fine. But if you just say, right, we want you to start using LinkedIn, off you go, there's going to be some risks.
Yeah, and it's like anything, isn't it? You wouldn't bring someone in to make cold call sales and not tell them what you want them to say or what the sales message potentially would be.
A lot of companies do, unfortunately, but that's a whole different. But it's the whole point, isn't it? Whatever, a lot of companies, training isn't always the best thing for a lot of businesses. But you're right. If you want good results, then you need to make sure you give them the right support up front.
Let's talk about some of the numbers. So I had a quick look at my LinkedIn. So I'm no king of social selling. I'm reasonably good, I think, at certain parts of it. But my day-to-day is recruitment. I use LinkedIn as a tool to market, and it works effectively. It's helped me sell books. It's helped me get podcast downloads and listeners. It's filled my training rooms, and it's allowed me to recruit and place people. So it works. It functions. And I would say 90% of my placements last year were through LinkedIn posts, not through advertising or putting huge amounts of calls out there to huge databases of people. My stats at the moment, so we're coming up to July, I think my total views for the year is just short of 900k. I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah.
Say it works. Your content is viewed by 10 million plus people every single month. That's ridiculous.
I mean, that's, obviously grown over
Yeah.
years of, hard sort of creating and grafting, but it's one of those things where there's a couple of things about this. Number one, it takes constant creativity. It takes hard work. I'm forever studying the algorithm. I'm studying new things that LinkedIn's bringing out, trying to make sure the content I put out is the best it can possibly be for my audience so that they get as much value and I generate as much from that. So there's that part of it, but then you also have this thing where the platform's changing constantly. So there's new forms of content. The algorithm changes constantly. One time it's pushing video, the next it's pushing polls, then it's going back to text posts. And so it's a lot of adapting, but yes, it's, my content is still on an upward curve, and I'm working hard to keep it like that. If I take my foot off the gas, then it could drop at any point. Social media is very volatile, but yeah, content is a powerful platform, and as you highlighted, whether you reach 1,000 people, 10,000 people, 100,000 people, that's a lot of people compared to, let's put it in comparison, how long it takes you to write a post on LinkedIn is the equivalent of making one call. So one post might reach 1,000 people, 10,000 people in the same time it would take you to make a phone call to one individual person. Now, not saying all those people will convert into customers, but once you've been doing it a while, a percentage will. And again, it's not a choice. Again, I don't want to get into that whole argument where I'm not saying use LinkedIn instead of making calls, but you do both. It takes you 5-10 minutes to put a post. Most general daily posts take 5, 10, 15 minutes to put out there. It's a tiny fraction of your day. You still got the rest of the day to do everything else you're doing, making calls, sending emails, having meetings, etc. But when you start doing that daily and you start reaching all those people, again, going back, it's like getting on stage, talking in front of an audience. When you do that on a regular basis, people get to know you, and it's where opportunities come from.
It's another tool, isn't it? And I think that's what I try and get across to people I talk to. I still make my targeted sales calls. But actually, if I can send out an email to a database of candidates, if I can put a post out that generates an active audience for what I'm looking to do, and it's given some value at the same time, that's all outward stuff. Once I've put my post out, it's done. Apart from interacting with perhaps some of the comments as we go, once that post is out, it allows me the next hour or 2 hours to make the calls while the post is doing what it needs to do. It also works while I'm asleep. Which is great. And I was always taught when I went on this kind of journey to grow in personal development was to create things that perhaps could create revenue streams whilst I slept. Social media is a tool to do that. I sell books via social media while I'm asleep that generates a revenue and an income. And there's no different with whatever you're trying to market. If I'm getting candidates send CVs at midnight while I'm tucked up in bed and I can call them in the morning, it's done what it's needed to do.
It goes beyond that, Steve, as well. I think absolutely when you're sleeping, but again, it can go into the weekends. It can go when you take holiday. I went to Greece a couple of years ago with my family, and I had posts scheduled every day. So content was going out on my channel. I didn't log into LinkedIn for about 10 days, but I had posts going out. I came back. I had loads of inbound leads. I sold tickets to a training event I was doing. Books had sold. And I hadn't been on LinkedIn. I'd been enjoying a holiday. And you're right. That is definitely I don't want to say it's like a dream place to get to, because it's not really much. It's a very easy dream to achieve. Building a personal brand, it's not rocket science. It doesn't take hours and hours and hours every day to do. We're talking about just simple, small things done consistently, just being active, sharing content, getting your name out there. Doing that consistently, builds a personal brand. And then if you're smart enough to, have content going out in the week, maybe schedule it for the weekends and holidays and stuff. It's an easy engine to build and a relatively easy engine to maintain. This is coming up to probably year 8 of being consistently active on LinkedIn. And it definitely, when you've been posting every day for nearly 8 years, I don't want to say it gets easier. You're still trying to find new ways to present similar concepts and stories. But if you can keep that engine going, then there's no reason it should ever slow down.
it is about consistency, isn't it? And I think a lot of people struggle with consistency. They wake up one day and say, right, I'm going to give this a go. I'm going to post. They get the kind of knockback because they didn't get the engagement they thought they were getting, or by Wednesday they've run out of ideas and they're thinking, what do I do now? How do you, or what do you do to keep consistency? Because 8 years is definitely there with consistent. How do you, or where do you find content? How do you keep generating those ideas?
There's a really funny story I'm going to share with this. I'm going to use the PT reference because it was just a conversation that I had last night. So I teach a lot of things about how to help with consistency. And one of those things is put a reminder in your calendar every day for LinkedIn or content creation, at least for the first few months, so it becomes habit. You know, for consistency, for me now, I feel bad if I go a day without not being active on LinkedIn in some capacity. I was talking to my PT last night. One of the things I struggle with is fitting time in every day to do some form of exercise. You know, when you're working 8, 12, 14 plus hour days in the office, back to back on Zooms and things like that, it's very hard to do that. And his advice was book time in your calendar for it. And I literally laughed at him. I said, I literally teach people how to do that for LinkedIn. And I never thought to attach it to, you know, something that I'm trying to do personally. So having a reminder in your calendar is something that can really help. One thing I just want to mention, because it's quite a powerful reality of content and personal branding, everything you post is an asset. So what you post today, you can repost in a few months' time. So it kind of takes that pressure of, you know, having to, now you're not going to just always reshare once you get to a certain point, but you get to a point where maybe 10, 20% of your content can be reshared, which just takes away some of that pressure of having to constantly create. Now I shared or reshared a post yesterday, and it was the third time I'd reshared it. I can't remember the engagement the first time I shared it, but the last time I shared it was about 6 months ago, and it did maybe just under 2,000 likes. I shared it yesterday for the third time, and it's already over 4,000 likes. So there's a sort of fear that, oh, if I reshare it, it won't do as well because people would have already have seen it. But as long as you're growing your network in that, there's two things. A, you would have hopefully grown your network between, and I say no sooner than 3 months. So 3 to 6 months is a good time to reshare something. Your audience should have grown, but not everyone would have seen it the first time round.
Yeah, yeah.
Only a percentage of your network.
And are you actually resharing it, or are you adding it as a new post, but it's the same content?
Yeah, no, resharing. Yeah, it's a good point. Let's clarify that, because resharing it is definitely not a good idea. No, I'm copying it and then publishing it as a new post. Okay. So it's sharing the same thing, not making any changes, but yes, not going back to it and then resharing it.
Okay. I thought that would be the case, and I think I often say when we put posts out, and you want people to be engaged straight away, and the shares don't tend to go too far, do they? They don't seem to add too much, but likes and comments, getting engagement, responding to the comments, for me anyway, seems to have a huge uplift in the posts, I suppose, overall results.
Yeah, this is a networking platform. People want to talk and communicate and interact. And the thing about LinkedIn, like all social media, you know, you post something, it's there on the feed, and then other people post and yours drops down. But when you start to comment and reply to comments and engage with people, that conversation keeps pushing it up, and it keeps it present and active in people's minds. Everyone you're talking to, their networks are now starting to see it. And so you're reaching farther and wider. But it's just that simple truth of, we're just talking. Just talk to people. Don't hide behind your computer. If you want to build your brand, if you want to generate business, if you want to give value, talk to people, have conversations, switch off autopilot, stop trying to sell to people, and just go out there to give. Go out and have, if you're having fun with it, trust me, they will be having fun with it as well. So go and enjoy it. You know, Steve, I know you'll appreciate it, but it's, building a personal brand is fun. It's hard work. I'm not trying to deny that, but it is fun. You get to be creative. You get to help people. You get to give value and see your content do great things. It's a very rewarding process. Hard work, but definitely worth it.
Do you know what else I found really enjoyable? I spent a lot of time, certainly over the last 4 or 5 years, actually just sharing the journey. So it's not all positive. It's not all about living the high life and doing well in certain areas. Sometimes you have really crappy days. Sometimes you don't feel up for it. Sometimes you feel demotivated, rejected, whatever's happening. And I'm not frightened to share those sides. Obviously, there has to be an element to why I'm sharing it. It's not just let's put everything personal on a post and see what happens. But I think sometimes, well, people enjoy the journey. People like to see people succeed. And I think if you're showcasing that it's not easy and there's ups and downs, actually people are more engaged to relate to what you're telling them and more likely to get involved, more likely to offer suggestions, opinions, advice. And actually it becomes a better journey because you feel like you've got a much larger audience egging you on, helping you out and trying to get you to where you want to get to.
Yeah. Which, being a human being, not trying to paint this perfect picture, which everyone knows isn't the case. Just be human, share your challenges, share the journey, let people in on that. I used to call it almost like opening the curtains, letting people see in and seeing what you're doing. And that builds a much stronger relationship than just trying to present this fully polished brand or this, perfect person that's so successful. Be honest with people and you'll build far greater relationships than if you try and build something that's ultimately fake.
Something we haven't covered yet is the daily sales. So what's the daily sales about? And I mean, that has a huge following, doesn't it?
Yeah, so there's kind of two parts to what I do. There's my personal brand, and then the daily sales was a brand I created I think about 6 years ago on LinkedIn to start with, where I wanted to, as soon as I started to see the opportunity on LinkedIn for content, and I thought, well, actually, I want to build my brand, but I also want to create a brand or channel that salespeople can follow, where I can share as much valuable content as possible for them, to motivate them, to educate them, to entertain them. And so the daily sales was created for that purpose, just a central, neutral sales platform, sales channel that salespeople could follow. I remember it very vividly, coming up with the idea of the name, sat on the sofa one evening. I downloaded a logo creator app and created the logo on my phone, set up the page on LinkedIn, built a very plain, free website, and just started sharing content. And over the first 12 months, just by sharing, good sales content, some memes, some quotes, some blogs every day, over the first year, it grew to 100,000 followers. And at that point, I was still working full-time corporate, sales leader. And it was always a hobby in my head. I didn't do it to start a business. It was never a business in my mind. It was just fun. I enjoy creating the content, and it was nice to have a channel to share it through. And as soon as it hit that milestone after the first year, I started to see the opportunity to, look at potentially monetizing it and seeing where it could maybe, create a small business. And so I started to look at companies that sell to salespeople. So your CRMs, your sales engagement and enablement platforms, etc. I had a captive audience of their target customers. How could we, help them become their, actual customers? And so where I found the best opportunity being, let's create great content together and then share it so that these people see you. We're not advertising or promoting. We're just trying to give value and, take them across. And it's just grown since. And yeah, here we are now, getting very close to 900,000 followers. The daily sales audience grows by at least 10,000 followers every month. And again, as if it's not enough pressure to put my own content out, I also have to create 3 to 4 posts a day on the daily sales to feed that engine. But again, sales is my passion. I've been in sales my entire career, and I love, really love creating the content and fueling that. But it still feels very unreal that it is what it is, and it's a business, and it's what I do as a job. It's a very surreal experience that I still fully haven't accepted exists, but I love it. I genuinely love it. I get to work with amazing companies. I get to create and, put out a lot of great content, and it's amazing getting messages and speaking to people that it's impacted. I mean, again, it's still surreal thinking about it, but people saying, oh yeah, we put your content on the walls, or I was having a tough day, but that post, put a smile on my face and helped me, you just don't sometimes realize the impact you can make by sharing content on LinkedIn. And so, yeah, if that isn't enough to encourage everyone watching or listening this now to go and create something, you might positively, if you can positively impact one person, surely it's got to be worth it.
And that's it, isn't it? They're the hidden moments that quite often other people don't get to see. You've been sent a direct message or an email to say, you've done something that has had a positive impact on me, and now I'm motivated or empowered to go and get on with what I've got to do. I get that a fair bit from the books and from various things. And it's the best bits for me, because it's almost that quiet moment where you think, you know what, it's worth it. It's worth those days where perhaps it is a bit of a struggle, or it's a bit of a slog, or you're not feeling motivated, because you know to do it, because at some point you're going to get one of those messages back.
Yeah, that's it. And we all love to help people, and LinkedIn social media is an amazing platform to do so. Again, it's just switch off autopilot. Stop worrying about numbers and trying to get sales and trying to get customers, and go out there to help people, whether it's through the content you put out, the messages you send, whatever you do. Go out there with a better mentality, and you'll do a lot more, and you'll enjoy it a lot more throughout the time as well. But it's such an amazing platform. And that's why I know both of us, every time we have a conversation, Steve, we can talk for hours about, the opportunities on LinkedIn, because we've both seen it firsthand. It's both impacted us directly, but we've also seen how it can impact others when, we try and help them. And, your book on personal branding, Steve, is gonna, it's a funny one, because it's such an early stage for personal branding. I can't wait to see it. I reckon each year you're going to sell more and more copies of it, because people will really start to wake up on it. But it's such a great book that can help a lot of people. So for everyone who's watching and listening to this, if you haven't started this yet, go and grab Steve's book and start it now, because in 3 to 5 years, when everyone else is doing it, you would have missed a very good opportunity had you started it right now. So I think there is a year, maybe 18-month window for people to come on and start building a brand and maximize the opportunity before it will become a lot harder. Just like it would be for you and me, Steve. Now, if we were to go on Facebook and try and build a personal brand, it would be tough, potentially impossible, because the platform is just so advanced to a point now where it really is a pay-to-play place. LinkedIn is in early stage prime, but won't be forever. So if anyone takes anything from this, go and start building a personal brand, grab Steve's book, and just start using LinkedIn.
Can I just say to all the listeners that are listening to this episode, I did not plug Daniel to say that. I am hugely grateful at the same time, but that wasn't a plan.
It wasn't. No, it's a funny thing with a podcast. Usually, I would come on with everyone approach, but actually, sometimes you just actually believe in something. And so, yes, we had no conversations. I wasn't even planning to mention your book. It just came into this whole point, and it's just, I can't stress it enough. I am so grateful that 8 years ago, I chose to start using LinkedIn. I am so grateful I made that decision.
Yeah.
Had I missed out on that, we always sometimes think about the opportunities we miss out on. It would have been a very different life I live now. And I don't want everyone watching and listening to this to have regrets. There is still a tiny window of opportunity on LinkedIn, and a great opportunity to build your personal brand where it's going to be easier and quicker for you to do so. So take advantage of it, because your future self will probably thank you for it.
100%. While we're on the topic for books, talk to me about your 2 books.
So my first book, The £1 Million LinkedIn Message, I wrote this in 2019. This was basically the story of how one LinkedIn message opened a sale that was worth over £1 million. All came from LinkedIn, obviously then grew into meetings and things like that. But that LinkedIn message was what started that conversation. So the book goes through the whole process, from finding the customer to research to the message, then everything that happened afterwards, to then closing the sale. So it's the whole journey, but it also has 25 different message templates, because there isn't just one size fits all when it comes to LinkedIn messages. So different variations to help people send better messages. And then last year, it's just over a year old now, I published the Ultimate LinkedIn Sales Guide, which I wanted to create similar to what I think you did with Top Biller, but sort of a comprehensive guide for salespeople, to use LinkedIn. So everything from profile to adding people, growing your networks, messaging, content, sales strategies, everything like that. So I just wanted to pack everything into a book, so it was as simple as possible for people to get more from LinkedIn. So yeah, those are my books.
And I've read both of them, and they are awesome. You've got people that are perhaps sat there thinking, well, where do I start? What do I do? I've done nothing yet. I'm about to embark on my personal brand journey. There's literally no excuses, is there? You've listened to this podcast. You've got the choice of 2 or 3 books just off this podcast that can help you get started and take you through the process. I always end the podcast episodes with a question of, if there was one single piece of advice to put to the listeners, what would that be? I think with you, it's slightly different. I do want that, but I also think if there's some top tips or top do's or don'ts that you would quickly cover, perhaps things that we haven't discussed already, if there is anything we've missed, what would you put out there, or what would you say?
So I'll start with the quote, because there's one that I use a lot in my trainings, which is, you reap what you sow. It's something that I had drilled into me right at the start of my career, and what you put in will determine what you get out. And that drives me every day in the content I put out, the people I add to my network, the messages I send. Everything is built to deliver a future result. So what I do today, I'm building for what will impact me this year, next year, and for many years to come. So you reap what you sow is a phrase I really gel to. And I think for people building a personal brand, what you put in determines that. Going then off of that to, okay, well, what do you put in to build a personal brand? There are a few key activities, a few top tips I would like to definitely leave the listeners and watchers. Number one, start growing your network. We've talked a lot about content today, but it's not alone in building a personal brand. You need to start, and just like pushing a snowball up a hill, you have to add people at the start. Your content won't build your audience alone, certainly not for the first few months. So every day, try and add a few people, 5, 10 people a day, and let that build it up. I've been doing some training with a company, sort of a multi-week program, and it's been amazing. I've been documenting how their networks have grown, and I think over the last 2 weeks as a group, they'd added over 600 new connections. Now, when you do that consistently, your audience builds and your network builds, which is a very important component of a personal brand. So number one, try and add people every day and start growing that audience. Mm-hmm. 2, we've talked about it a lot, but start putting content out. Start letting people get to know you. And the third component we haven't talked heavily about today, which I think is also important, but start getting your name out there by commenting on posts. It's a really easy thing to do. Again, 5-10 minutes max, but on a daily basis, just try and comment on some industry relevant posts and get your name out there. When you do those 3 things, your audience grows, people start to get to know you through your content, and they start to see you regularly. And that's how they get to know you. That's how relationships are built. So those 3 tips, thinking about you reap what you sow, invest time into doing that, and that will start to sow very good seeds in the personal branding farm that will grow over the coming weeks, months, and years to come.
Okay. And people that have listened to this, they enjoy what you said, they want to come and find you. Obviously, LinkedIn is the best place to go and find you. You offer a multitude of training workshops. What sort of things have you got on at the moment that would be of interest to listeners?
Yeah, there's a few things. So if you go find me on LinkedIn, obviously that's where I'm at. You'll see there is a link on my profile for a free LinkedIn ebook. It's 160 pages. I wrote it this year. It's 100 tips for LinkedIn and Sales Navigator, completely free. The link will take you to download it. You'll get it straight away. Mm-hmm. That's definitely a good starting point, a really nice free resource. But if you obviously follow me on LinkedIn, or go to my website, the link will be on LinkedIn as well, danieldisney.online. I run webinars every month, which are free to attend. And then what you'll see through that are some of my, opportunities for paid masterclasses and things like that. But I always try and give as much upfront as possible. So go and grab that free book, join some of my free webinars, because trust me, I give as much as possible during them.
Good stuff. Daniel, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Steve, as always, thank you for having me. Great conversation. I look forward to catching up again soon.